Okay, we are live. How are you doing, guys? Welcome to Adult Beverage Friday. Adult Beverage Friday. Thank you for coming in. So, we're going to make this live stream an hour and a half. I'm going to try to look at the clock and end it exactly at an hour and a half so we don't get any complaints. It also makes it acceptable to library. So, because this is going to transfer over to library. So, welcome, guys. Welcome, Shredding, Entire Meyer, Noldra, Strife, Jellyfish, Peter Walker, uh, the lady, James Mason, Galvano, Tommy Lud, Tommy Ludgate Gold, Dizzy, Doomed, Nino, and I'm sure I missed some. I think, up there, T Torture and Crypto Gamer, Industry Studies, Shredding Splinters, Entire Meyer. Okay, so guys, Industry Studies. Okay, so welcome, my friends. Thank you for coming in, and hello, Soham. Our topic tonight, Nitro, and yeah. So our topic tonight is going to be a privacy 101, kind of to summarize, because I have so many videos and people don't know where to start, and I'm getting a sense that what I'm saying is being misunderstood because it's getting to be such a big topic and there's so many videos. So it's going to be uh, better for me to kind of give you kind of a roadmap, a general roadmap, and then instead of going to a lot of detail like I usually do on these Q&A sessions. So our approach will be that I'll talk hopefully for mostly 15 minutes, and then I'll go into Q&A. So I'll kind of ignore the comments for now, and then when we get to about 15 minutes or so, when I get done with what I'm saying, then we will look at the comments and I'll get into it. So uh, hold on, I'm getting error messages on my computer here. By the way, I hello, huge device. By the way, my replacement part for my Linux computer arrived, and then I started my laptop, and it didn't start. So I don't know why. I gotta go figure it out. Everything seems to be wired okay, so I still can't use Linux. We are still broadcasting on Zucking Windows. What do you mean there's no audio? There is audio. So we're still broadcasting on my Windows computer, being sent over via OBS. Uh, who has no audio? Everyone has audio. I can see the audio going through. So turn up your turn up your headphones. Okay, so yes, Joe Rogan. Thank you, Joe Rogan. He apparently uh, found my channel a few days ago or last week, about a week ago, and well, I don't know when he found it, but he subscribed about a week ago. Last Friday, I think, was when he subscribed, and I guess he was binge watching my videos, and when he actually talked about me on his podcast for a very long time, surprisingly, he actually knew a lot of the topics, and I was like, wow. I mean, it's somebody who actually watched a lot of videos, because in order to get that kind of knowledge, then you have to have watched several videos, not one. So given that, well, John McAfee knows Rob too. I interviewed John McAfee. I know John McAfee and Rogan don't see eye to eye, and so on. So yeah. Anyway, the problem is that people are coming to me and asking questions, and some of the questions turn into kind of a paranoia about privacy, and we're gonna try to eliminate the paranoia. Hello, Christopher, Space Jew, Jay. So we're gonna try to eliminate the paranoia by actually giving you kind of a probability rate of where the problems are in privacy, because not all the issues are at the same level. Not all the issues are at the same level. Now, if you notice my videos over the last year and a half that I've been doing this on YouTube, in the first part of the year, I was doing mostly videos on computers. And people were asking me, why don't you talk about computers? Why don't you have videos in computers? And that is actually incorrect. Most of the videos that I did for the first 3 quarters of last year were actually all about computers. And then around August, September or so, I changed over and focused on phones, because what's happened, guys, is that most of the privacy issues have shifted and really deserves, attention. And some of it I didn't really want to talk about at the time because I didn't have a solution. And now that, time has gone and I've arrived at a solution, so now I know how to handle this. Because I've always known, for example, that my iPhone was spying on me. Even though Tim Cook says that iPhone is zucking privacy, and it's zucked up. It's no less zucked up than Facebook. And don't tell me that, Apple is more secure than Google and so on. They're all the same. They're all the same. They're all the same. But I'm going to tell you something very specific here. I'm going to tell you something very specific. And that is, your computer is a lot safer than your phone. I would say we're talking about 70-30 kind of thing, 70% of the risk is on your phone, not on your computer. 70-30. So if you just think about that, and you can actually eliminate a lot of the risk on a computer. If you actually think about it, the computer, actually, you can eliminate pretty much 99% of the risk. But we're all tied to the phone, and a lot of the trackers are on the phone. They do not exist on the computer. And the reason why is because they never thought of the computer as being portable. And because it's not portable, it doesn't have the sensors, gyros and location trackers and Wi-Fi scanning and all that, and GPS. All that requires some capability with GPS, for example, before you can do a lot of stuff. And that doesn't exist on a computer. So even if you added a GPS to a computer, the OS itself doesn't take advantage of that, because they don't know that that's standard equipment. So they can't actually do much of anything on a computer. So I'm going to kind of lay out kind of a general threat, and this kind of explains why I sell some products that I do, because it kind of explains it based on the threat that we find. Mostly the threat on a computer has to do with your IP address. Okay, so a computer IP address is the number one threat. So some of you are actually thinking that the threats have to do with trackers. I have so many messages saying, well, how come there's trackers? How come there's this and that? It's like, oh my gosh. This is kind of the hype that you hear because you use like Brave browser saying we're finding all these trackers and eliminating it. And you think you're actually safe. I have a video on browser threats, and it's called the browser threat test. And it shows that even Brave can be browser fingerprinted. Even Tor can be browser fingerprinted. It takes a lot of procedures not to get browser fingerprinted, and there's so many techniques for doing that, and sometimes the combination of factors will be enough to identify you, even if it's not 100%. They can use some secondary data to do a 100% match. So the formula isn't as straightforward as you might think. So one of the problems with focusing on trackers is that you don't even realize that a browser fingerprint expert, like somebody like me, knows that I don't have to save a cookie to track you. I don't need a zucking cookie. So I don't need to worry about cookies, because you're going to get tracked regardless. You can't stop it anyway, with or without a cookie. My solution to it is completely different. I am assuming that you will get browser fingerprinted. My solution is to make the data useless, disinformation. And that is what I focus on, because there's no defense to browser fingerprinting directly on a single browser. None. Okay, we're going to go back to this, but I want to lay out the computer side. A computer is a lot safer. Most of the threats on a computer actually lie in two areas, not just the IP address as I said, but two. It's browser fingerprinting and the IP address. That's the main threat on a computer. Now, hacking and all that, that's true. You can get hacked more on a computer more than a phone. But guess what? 99% of those hacks are going to come from one place, and that place is called email. Email, and it's you should wonder why I never get hacked, because I treat every email with such mistrust. Every email that comes to me, I mistrust. If I don't recognize an email, I'm actually going to go look at the headers, go look at the IP addresses on there and see where that comes from, if it's legit, what servers it came from, and that's kind of hard to do for a normal person. But I never open an attachment unless I know exactly what the attachment is. I don't touch the email. I use a particular kind of email client to make sure that the email doesn't get open in the background. 90% of your email clients from Microsoft and Apple and so on open the email in the background for it to go fast. So you think your email is going fast, it's because the email is being opened in the background, which then allows you to be subjected to something called a beacon attack. And I've demonstrated that in my hacking, email hacking videos. And I actually made an example, and I can do a beacon attack on anyone. I can spot your movements all day by tracking the changing IP addresses with a beacon attack. And all because you're using a email client like Outlook, Microsoft Mail, Mac Mail, and so on that can be tracked. And this is why I only use one email client on my computer, and that is Thunderbird. I only use Thunderbird even on a Mac, on Linux, on PC. I only use Thunderbird. On a phone, I use K9. I try not to use email on a phone, but on the occasion that I will leave it on, and I don't always leave it on, I actually have a fake email account on my phone. I don't have my regular email on my phone. So yes, use Thunderbird. What do I mean? No using Thunderbird. Use Thunderbird. Okay, so if you understand some of this, then that's the main issue with computers. And the solution, again, just a quickie here, the solution to browser fingerprinting is not to worry about ducking cookies, but to do browser isolation. This is something I invented. I'm the only one that did this. And Firefox try to do containers as a way to do something near browser isolation, but unfortunately it's not as effective as browser isolation. You can still be tracked with Firefox containers, but you cannot be tracked with browser isolation. What is browser isolation? Quick summary. Browser isolation is when you have the two biggest trackers, Google and Facebook, isolated in its own browser. Everyone else you can use the same browser for everything else, but keep Google and Facebook in its own two separate browsers. So for Google, use Chrome. If you're going to watch YouTube, use Chrome. And if you're going to do Facebook, use Brave or something else, and then use Firefox for everything else. So I have, in 100% of the cases, I have multiple browsers running at the same time, at one time. I've used multiple browsers running. I do not care for using Proton Mail. I don't do any of that. Watch my videos on that. I've already explained that. I don't particularly find any benefit to using Proton Mail. It's fine, just like any other email. It doesn't make it superior to me. So I prefer using my own email server that I control, and I know that even Proton Mail isn't going to read it because I don't trust anyone, and I certainly don't trust Proton Mail. DuckDuckGo is fine. Some people complain about trackers and DuckDuckGo. Again, understand what I'm saying. Use browser isolation. For search engine, obviously use DuckDuckGo or StartPage. I mostly use DuckDuckGo now. I use StartPage for a long time, and don't use Google for your search engine. Turn off your Google activity controls, and these are the things that affect a computer. This is probably 75% of the issues on a computer. Okay, now the rest of the issues, the rest of our security problems are mostly on the phone. Mostly on the phone. The phone is the biggest threat. So I don't want to minimize discussing computers, but the fact of the matter is 70% of the risk is on the phone, not in the computer. The risk on the phone, as I've explained in many videos, include device fingerprinting, Wi-Fi scanning. Those are the two big ones. Device fingerprinting means your identity is attached to the phone. Wi-Fi scanning means that Google and Apple can spot your location and track you 24/7. So if you're in if you went to a protest this last week, especially here in Los Angeles, if you went to a protest this last week and you had your phone in your pocket, you're zucked. Sorry. You didn't watch my show? You're zucked. So, yeah, somebody has that. Now you say, well, no one's doing anything to me today. You know what? They have all the time in the world. Okay? They can research you next year. The data is not going to disappear. They have the data. Okay? They have the data. They're going to go say, well, let's isolate all these people who are going to all these protests and mark them and profile them. And what about those looters? Let's identify them and, and keep an eye on them because, maybe we can find proof in some photo or someplace and actually identify them because likely they have the phones in their pockets. So if you're not watching what I'm saying here, then yes, you've been zucked already because you had your phone in your pocket and you cannot escape. You cannot escape Wi-Fi scanning and browser fingerprinting unless you have a de-Googled phone. There is no zucking escape. There's no escape. People are telling me, well, I have a Google phone, but I disabled Google. And no, you don't understand. When Google loads itself on Android open source, they actually replace programs. It's not the same code now. They've replaced it. Turning it off doesn't undo the fact that they've replaced the zucking code from open source to now some secret thing in there. I can tell you right now that the Wi-Fi scanning switch in settings is not it. Oh, I'm going to go to settings. There's a Wi-Fi scanning. I can turn that off and I'm safe now. Wrong. And all of the apps are getting telemetry with a device fingerprint. So there is no escape, guys. None. So the only solution is disinformation. How do we achieve disinformation? Easy, by having a phone that is not attached to Google and Apple. If you think that there's any difference with Apple and Google, zuck, no. Device fingerprinting, Wi-Fi scanning, both Apple and Google, and that's why they can do COVID contact tracing. Because they already have that data. Forget about this Bluetooth nonsense. Oh, we have very secure Bluetooth for your contact tracing. I already told you they don't need that. That's just a political ploy. They already have your location. They even have lawsuits saying, well, you said we can turn off the location tracking, but you're tracking us 24/7. There are lawsuits on that with Google right now. The reality is that you cannot turn it off. And for people who say, well, it doesn't exist on Apple, well, zuck. Look at Find My Phone. What do you think that is? And when people say, well, I can turn off Find My Phone, wrong. Find My Phone, if you turn it off, you're just saying, you don't want to see what Apple sees. I'm just going to turn it off, and Apple's not going to go send it to you. That doesn't stop them from tracking because Wi-Fi scanning continues. Okay, so that's why my videos have been focused on these two areas. That's why I sell VPN routers for your home, because if any one of you reveal an IP address, everyone is identified, especially if you're sending data to Facebook, because one of your guests happen to be on Facebook. It's going to identify all the MAC addresses of all the computers in your area. And if you're on a VPN, it gives them this information. The reason for browser threats, browser isolation, is to give this information. If they track you, they can't identify who the tracking belongs to. If you block Facebook and Google, it doesn't allow the data to be reattached to its owner account. And you do that by browser isolation. So VPNs, VPN routers, browser isolation, and then some of the techniques I talk about in the in health. Thank you, MK. Thank you. I talk about in my videos and browser threat tests. That is solved by a VPN and a VPN router. So even your guests, your IoT devices, you all get protected. So that's one element. That's why I sell that, because there's no easy solution for that. A router made for VPN routing is kind of expensive. You can find them at flashrouters.com. They're like $400 to $700. So that's not within the range of the average person to do. That's why I sell mine, and it's very inexpensive, up to a third. It's only $100 and some dollars. So that's why I do that. And then on the phones, I told you that by doing de-Googled phones or Linux phones, then thank you, Jayant Sharma. Thank you. By doing Linux phones and Google phones, then you cannot be fingerprinted and scanned with Wi-Fi location. So they can't do that. So some people have asked me, what about old phones, Windows phones? Yes, they're fine if you can use them. Some of them no longer work because they're 2G. But if 2G works for you, then you can use those. Here in the U.S., we can't use that anymore. Even the BlackBerry Bold 9900, which is the last BlackBerry that I recommended, it's getting hard to use that. That's 3G only. So you have to kind of stick to an LTE phone. And for that, I've been selling Nexus 5 with Ubuntu Touch. Unfortunately, I can't find any Nexus 5s anymore. So at the moment, it's very hard to sell Ubuntu Touch, except with the new option of a Pine phone for Ubuntu Touch. And even that is not yet ready. So it's not ready yet. So I'm not going to go push you to buy a Pine phone unless you're willing to wait. So Pine phone's not ready yet for Ubuntu Touch. So Ubuntu Touch is not a good solution right now, simply because we're running out of devices. So at the moment, we're kind of stuck with the Google phones. And even that's hard, because it's hard for me to buy phones in volume to sell to you guys. So, it's, for example, 50% of the Google Pixels I order have to be returned because I can't unlock the bootloader. So it is very time consuming to do these. So the Moto G7s that I sell, it's hard to keep in stock. And then the Moto G7 Plays, there's a few bugs in there, and some people don't like that. So I prefer using a Moto G7 Play, and regardless of the bugs, just because it's smaller, and I just tolerate the bugs. If you can't tolerate the bugs, then you should use the G7 and the Pixel. I can't have that many Pixels because I have to return half of them. Thank you, Mickey Leaks. Thank you. So anyway, so that's a kind of a big picture of the issues. And so if you come to me and say, I don't talk about computers, that's not right, because browsers and antivirus and all that, and how to set up a computer, what your computer name is, all that. There's so many videos in that, so many zucking videos. So just so you know, there's a lot. And by the way, yes, Mickey Leaks proved to me that I cannot ship phones to India. India was mail to India was suspended, so I can't send to India. Okay, Librem phone. I don't know. I don't have mine yet. It's been over a year since I ordered it. I still don't have my Librem 5. Okay, guys. So I will now answer questions. Christopher Trucker Live, how are you doing, my friend? Fellow citizen, which episode of Rogan? The 2 episodes ago, 1484, I think. Can't be 100% certain. Is it hard to de-Google phones? Yes, it is kind of hard. It is kind of hard. Now you could be lucky. It could be easy for you the first time, but I'm going to be honest with you. If you don't do a lot of research ahead of time and spend a ton of time researching everything and knowing every bug, if you just follow the instructions as laid out, there's a 70% chance you will hard brick your phone. In which case, you'll spend you will when you hard brick it, you won't know what to do. You'll pretty much lose your phone, and just 30% of you will be okay. You'll be able to do it quickly and no issues, but it's risky. So if it's worth your time, yes, learn to do it. If it's not worth your time, you want to spend your time, you know, paddleboarding out on the ocean and having fun instead of sitting on a computer trying to figure it out. Send it to me and I'll do it for you. I sell my own phones that I purchased, but I will de-Google any phone of the same model that I do. So if you have any of the models that I have listed, then I will do those for you, and then you can and I will do them even with Ubuntu Touch. If you have a Nexus 5 or OnePlus One, I will do those with Ubuntu Touch. And so yeah, so I can't do the flashing anymore. I have people now to do it because it's too many. So I have to hire people to do the flashing. And then I just have to supervise them. So so yes, just send them over. Send it to my address, and then we'll handle it for you and ship it back. And and it's a fixed price of $100 a phone. It's very time consuming to do. So if you know how long it took, then you will not begrudge me the $100 per phone. It's very time consuming, uh, very time consuming. In a way, it's not worth it. I cannot do a OnePlus 7T, a OnePlus 6 though we can, and maybe a 6T. It was the episode with Reggie Watts. Yes, the episode with Reggie Watts. Never mind, you just answered. Uh, does Lineage OS or UB ports change the phone IMEI? You cannot change IMEI. You change the IMEI, you go to zucking jail. 20 years. Federal federal prison. 20 years here in the US. The FBI will be on you for changing IMEI. So don't mess with that. Why India block? I don't know if India blocked. That's just there's no mail. Mail was it had nothing to do with the phone. The U.S. Post Office cannot ship to India at this time. Obviously, because either there are no flights from the U.S. to, or not sufficient flights from the U.S. to India, or or India itself is stopping anything coming from the U.S. I have no idea which. Occasionally breaks, you must restart it. Once in a while, it is meant to be. It's not meant to be on 24/7. Commercial VPNs get too big, then get blocked by services when you really want to use VPN. Yes, if you wear the same mask and shoes all the time, you are identifiable. Browser isolation works if you do it right. Uh, I invented the term browser isolation, so of course, if you use that technique, I'm very proud of you. But I publicly announced my technique on here on Periscope 4 years ago for browser isolation. That's what I announced it because I said, okay, there's the problem of browser fingerprinting, and I thought about the solution. The only solution I could come up it was pretty hard to solve. The only solution I could come up with was browser isolation. Now, there's actually, if you Google browser isolation, it's being used in a completely different way. There's nothing to do with my definition. My definition, I invented it. Browser isolation is my definition. If other people call it something else, that has nothing to do with me. And we came up with the term at the same time, and that doesn't make their use of it any more valid than mine because I came up with it with my definition. I don't really have any thoughts on WireGuard protocol. Use it if you can, but I'm not going to go switch over to it for my sake. VPNs have a VPN router versus unlimited. What do you think about the security implications of commercial VPN routers with regard to backdoors? By the way, if you're welcome to, audit my VPN. If you don't believe that I actually don't have logs, we can go do it live if you want. Guarantee you, I use it. It must not have logs. My only question is, why does my Tor Bytes VPN occasionally loses connection? Occasionally? You're lucky to have a internet. I'm lucky if this broadcast, and I'm not using a VPN right this moment on this. You're lucky if, and I don't want to, because in case something happens, but I'm going to tell you, this is a new time here. Everyone is zucking live streaming. Every kid is live streaming school. Every office worker is live streaming everything. I mean, the stress on the internet is huge. Ever since this COVID-19 started, the internet has kind of like, especially with Spectrum and Charter and all the different DSL companies. That's where all the bottlenecks are. So if you're coming from a home network, the routes from the home networks are all zucked up. Kev, if you really want to research this and you want to, you seem skilled enough you can do this. Run MTR. Go find out what the problem is in the route. Run MTR. Instead of saying that's a VPN, run MTR. Okay? Or trace route for individual, but MTR is better because it can repeat the test over and over. And then you will see what the down router is, and it's not. You will find that it's not me. It's somewhere along the route. If Spectrum is down and your VPN is slow, I can't help you with that because I can watch my modem go up and down all day. My modem, my ISP's modem goes down, easily 10, 15 times a day. So, it's not, it's just what it is today. Do you ship to Israel? I don't know. Why don't you find out yourself? Ask your post office. Because I don't know if there are flights, so that's a problem. Some of the smaller countries, India, I thought it was a very big country, and yet maybe there's not enough flights from the U.S. to India. There may be lots of flights in India, but maybe not from the U.S. So if there are not a lot of flights, it's hard to get mail. Okay? What would happen after I delete my Facebook account? You will be happier. I deleted my Facebook account in 2012. It took me 3 months to delete everything. So for every year you use it, it's going to take another month to delete it. So I used it for, 4 years or whatever, and it took a while to delete. So yes, delete your zucking Facebook accounts. It's very dangerous for you. Okay, hold on. What was that question? Something about 2 VPNs. What was that again? Check the photos, Mickey Leaks. You think it's addressed to you specifically, though, but the post office didn't look at you. They just looked at the address. Vivo sold 17,000 mobiles with the same IMEI in India. Cybercrime police charged Vivo yesterday. Wow, zucked up. 17,000 mobiles with the same IMEI. Wow. That's in the U.S. That's 20 years per phone. So you'll be thousands of years in prison. My only question was, do not use any keyboard. The only keyboard you should use is the open source one that comes with AOSP. Apple uses non-standard hardware. Wrong. Apple uses Qualcomm. And the chip in Qualcomm for Wi-Fi scanning comes from Skyhook Wireless. Okay? The CEO of Skyhook Wireless. You have to kind of dig some of this. And this is the stuff I know comes from like deep digging. And you find it. I don't know if you can even find this video now. But the CEO of Skyhook Wireless was actually very proud and said, well, the Wi-Fi triangulation technology that we put in, that is used on iPhone, was developed by us, and it's in the Qualcomm chip. They actually acknowledge that. So, do you want an iPhone with that Skyhook wireless chip in there that you cannot undo in its firmware? Zuck. No zucking way. Leave your iPhone at home. Leave your iPhone at home. Don't take it out. Is it possible to have anonymous private calls without the cell provider or government knowing? Do not use. That's pretty hard. That's pretty hard. With metadata, there's no escape. You have to use voice over IP, but voice over IP has metadata. Very hard. I would say, yeah, use Signal maybe, and then use fake phone numbers, meaning temporary SIM cards. WireGuard could easily be blocked. Let's see. No, it is not. What? Skyhook Wireless was sold. Interesting. Okay, didn't know that. Did you install newer Android OS on Android boxes? What is a Android box? So on the G7 Play, I install Android 10 AOSP modified. On G7 and Pixel, I install Lineage OS Android 9 modified. Okay, none of these are standard. They're all modified. So, are you using Pi 4 with 8 gigabyte of RAM? I only use, you can use 1 gigabyte of RAM, but it's cheaper to buy it with 2 gigabytes of RAM. So, they hardly make any more 1 gigabyte. So, 2 gigabytes is just as cheap. So, you might as well do 2 gigabytes of RAM. How do I download RAM? You can't download RAM. You insert it. It's hardware. Duct taping iPhones to railroad tracks works very well. Yes, it does. That's a pretty good technique. Do you have any courses on phone security or anything you would recommend? Just watch my video. It gets into detail on phone security. But phone cybersecurity is not the same as privacy. No. I'll give you an example. Graphene OS, which is good. I mean, I don't have a problem with Graphene OS as a OS. It's almost the same as what I do. Now the difference is that they actually made supposedly some change in some of the C code that has to do with memory allocation, which they claim is better for protecting us against some theoretical memory threat. But since there's no real life, proof that's even an issue, then don't know. That's more cybersecurity. That's not really a privacy issue. So that doesn't really concern me so much. Some of the threats on the phone imply that somebody has to get your phone in their possession and try to attack it. And that's not the kind of threat that I'm concerned about, because if I were you, I wouldn't keep much data on my phone. Do not get into the habit of storing your photos on your phone. So you're saying, well, I'm going to take my nudies and I'm going to put it on a phone. It's like zucked up. That is zucked up. Don't do that. If you want to lose your privacy, that's number one. Okay? So if I don't keep data on my phone, I don't really care if somebody takes my phone at an airport and say, we're going to confiscate your phone because, you're this internet security guy, privacy guy, and there's probably stuff on your phone with secrets. And I'm going to say, here, zucking, take it. I change my phones all the time because I don't have any data on it. I can easily, if I have a new model I'm testing, I test with a new model. I transfer over to the new phone. So my IMEI is always changing. My IMSI will be the same because I reuse the SIM card. But I always change the phone to a different IMEI because I'm always changing phones. Sometimes I switch over the IMEI and to a completely different phone model. So I could be using different IMEIs, every week, just because I am dealing with so many phones. I mean, I have a stack of phones. So for that reason, the uh, the threat is to me is more of data leaking out, not from somebody getting a hold of the phone physically, because there isn't any in mine, but but mostly the fear of somebody capturing your phone is you keep your zucking secrets on the phone, and zucking secret texting and all that. I don't do any of that. I put everything in Brax.me, and you try hacking that, because everything I do is in on my cloud encrypted storage. Then I don't really put anything on the phone. So that's why I don't worry about phone hacking so much. And that could be different if you're, you know, depending on your threat model, that could be different. But for what I do, I don't really need to worry about any of that. Okay, that's not a big deal. Same issue with, do I worry about cookies? And I repeatedly, I don't care about trackers. I do not care. I don't even delete cookies. I don't really care. I just want the companies that's collecting the cookies to not match it to me. And the way I do that is to always use a VPN, stop locations, and use browser isolation. So it doesn't matter that they do tracking. It doesn't apply to any identity. They'll say, oh, you ordered something a moment ago. Well, good luck tomorrow. Since, what identity are you going to match that to? Can my car get zucked? Yes, your car can get zucked, but again, that's more of a hacking risk. That's kind of scary, Action Potato, because obviously a three-letter agency can say, I'm going to take over your car and crash you. Scary thing, because they can do that. What do I use for storage? I use Brax.me myself. You don't have to use that, but Brax.me is my app, so I use it. I know that if I store a file on Brax.me, it's encrypted. So I like that, and I'm happy with that, and there you are. So I put my stuff on there. Would you build a password manager? I don't need to. There's open source ones. I use KeePass. Why would I need to rebuild KeePass? There's nothing. Maybe change the interface because it's kind of hard to use, but other than that, it's fine. I don't know what dark trace is. Not if you don't have an internet enabled a car. Car runs on Linux, so you can hack Linux on the car. In some cases you stick something there's a secret USB port in there. If you know where it is, it's hidden, and a lot of car models can be hacked that way. So drive a 1985 Jeep. A 1985 should be safe. Yes. Anything from the 90s back, I think are okay. 90s back. 2000s starting to get to be a problem. 2010, you're zocked. Once you get into 2010 and newer, then they're mostly drive-by-wire. Yes, most Western countries have the Five Eyes, and of course, communist countries have their own, zucking IA equivalent. Self-driving uses JavaScript. It doesn't matter if they use JavaScript. The car runs on Linux. Cars run on Linux. Do you use your own physical email server or the cloud? I use cloud email server that I run. I use Amazon for my email server, which I made. I made my own email server. It's on Amazon. At some point, people may want to have their own email server because that's the safest. Even though email's not safe, at least you're slightly safer with your own email server. What I need to do is create virtual machines and create a large server, and rent the email services for that to each one of you, and then you can manage your own email server, because it's very. Thank you, Jayant Sharma. Thank you. How do government access data remotely? Not that's not an easy thing to do. Giant Sharma, that's not an easy thing to do. Uh, SS7, because they have to do it from the baseband. What they can do is get it in transit. SS7 and Stingray. That's not necessarily, accessing your hard drive directly. It's usually getting things in transit. Now, they, of course, can take your phone and then do things right there, but that's not Stingray. That's a completely different attack. So watch my videos on who's spying on your phone, part one, part two. Very detailed. Okay, very, very detailed. I don't think anyone has done that kind of advanced study on phone spying by any entity, including governments. So those videos are very detailed. Who's spying my phone? Part one, part two. I wanted to do up to part four, but no one was watching it, so I didn't spend the time to do part four. Braxme message board is blowing up on my phone. It is. Do you recommend Windows Phone? If it runs, you can use it. It's kind of unusable, though. I mean, Windows Phone? Can you really use a Windows Phone? You have a browser in the Google phone? Yes, I use DuckDuckGo browser. Or you can use WebView browser too, which is Chromium. So Chromium is built in, but I don't use that. I use DuckDuckGo from F-Droid. Do you recommend LintPhone? Do I recommend it? Is it any safer? Do you think it's encrypted? It's not encrypted. So, it's not encrypted. Okay, let me see what I'm missing here. Does Cuba have its own intranet? There's actually, what's the name of the internet? What's the name of that? P2P? Because you can have a internet inside of the internet, and P2P. Is it P2P? I got to see where it's on my Linux box. It's not on this one, and it's not very well used. It's kind of like Tor, but it's not, and because you're basically having a virtual network inside the normal internet. But you can actually, I have a video on a mesh network. If you're running like a prepper's compound and you want your own private internet, it's very easy. I have a video on that. It's called mesh networks. So I made my own mesh network. I connected my boat to my house, and many miles away, and I'm able to get internet from my house past live streams, and even do I can do live streaming and so on, and I'm running a website on the boat from remote. So you can do that with using ham radio. Andrew, thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Does that mean I can use that to buy coffee? Thank you. Kiwi browser. I don't know. Blocks ads. Is that, my VPN automatically blocks ads. So I don't even worry about any of that. What is the best option for a Pine phone right now? It depends on what you're doing. For casual user, Ubuntu Touch, obviously. But for what I want to do with it, which is to program it in Linux, I like to use Debian Phosh. Phosh, which is the front end that they're are developing for the Librem 5, is starting to shape up nicely. I'm really liking it, and I just want the power saving to be worked on more. And once the power saving is done and it's a little bit more stable, I'm going to start programming on the Pine phone. For example, I want to make it into an LTE VPN router. Did you saw VPN download for Mac? Did you saw VPN? I don't have a problem with VPN download for Mac. I don't have a problem with it. When will Pine phone be made? I don't know. Maybe soon. It's not. it's weeks away. It's not like a long time. It's mostly working already, except for the camera. I think the last one's going to be solved is the camera. Go talk to tech support on VPNs, Christopher. Talk to tech support so they can kind of handhold you. What language would you use to program the phones? What language would you use to program the phones? You mean PinePhone? Probably nowadays I would use Python. Thank you, Leonard Sill. Is that Sill or Sit? I can't. Kind of tiny. You missed my super chat, Brian. Let me go find your super chat, Brian. Hold on. Things are just moving so fast. I'm like. Oh, there you go, Brian. Thank you for reminding me. Do you like pfSense? What is the best VM for Linux or Windows? I don't need pfSense. Obviously, I have my own router software, so why would I need pfSense? So, I have more control with mine. Is pfSense any better than what I did? Obviously not. It's the same thing. And, just because somebody gave a label to it and you say, oh, I'm using pfSense, and, I wrote my own. So Brax Router is my own software, and it has some variations. It's a lot simpler, but since I can control everything in code, I can do a lot more stuff like my own automatic updates and everything else. So I have more control over my own instead of pfSense, but you can use whatever you want. It's okay. Now, what is the best VM? Now, saying what's the best is really a question, and VMs is a very important question, and we really need to talk about that in another video. Because, VMs, virtual machines, allow you to isolate yourself on a computer. A phone already has isolation. A phone already runs a VM. So your Android apps run in a VM, for example. It's called Dalvik. So, or they call it the Android runtime now, but it's still a Dalvik executable. And that's a virtual machine. So Dalvik is actually a virtual machine environment. And, so whatever Apple's equivalent is, they're all running in a virtual machine. So would you use a virtual machine on a computer? It takes a bit of discipline to do that and a lot of resources. So it's very hard to do that consistently. But it's, if your computer fast enough, it's really a pretty good thing to do, because browser fingerprints gets disabled by each VM. So if you have a VM for Facebook, a VM for Google, that is kind of like browser fingerprinting. Okay, so that's an alternate approach. It's kind of it's kind of a slow approach because you're using so much resources. But some of the newer VMs don't really take up as much resources, especially on Linux. What the heck is Super Chat? Super Chat is when you see people donate to the broadcast. And I thank you so much, by the way. My goodness, a lot of people donated tonight. That is so awesome. Cuba Internet's connected to Alba 1, leading to Venezuela. Okay. Below this live stream, there's a link where you can pledge. Okay. Thank you. Boy, the chat's running so fast. It's disappearing before I can read it. Okay, hold on. No, you don't use Kali. Kali's for hackers. That's not for your own personal security. Kali is an attack system. Hello, Just Ed. Hey, you. Okay. Stuxnet. What about Stuxnet? Mad Cow, that's a different topic, and some of this is getting more complex. And I'm just trying to research that, and I don't have an answer to, what they're building in new CPUs, because obviously it's a secret, but from what I'm learning, they're building in backdoors that are truly scary because they're actually kind of like Stuxnet modules. They're replaceable little code, similar to FPGA, field gate programmable array. So like an FPGA thing, you can take hardware and make, instead of having firmware, they build in flashable ROM inside hardware, and you can change the code. So goodness, that means they can insert malware after the fact. Please talk a little bit about these always connected CPUs like Snapdragon, the ones Microsoft new Surfaces are using and new notebooks are probably going to use soon. Okay, I don't know what that means. Always connected. The OS is the one responsible for that. Cubes is a bit cumbersome for clipboard and file. Yes, Cubes is cumbersome, and that's the reason I don't recommend that for average users. You have to be hello, I'm in it. You have to be kind of an advanced user to utilize that. I had a situation last year where someone was able to read my text messages. That's easy. If they have a remote access Trojan, they can do that. I'm going to tell you a little story. Sidetrack here. Okay. T-Mobile, which I used, and the former CEO is always on. John Legere was always on my broadcast. So yeah. So I know other famous people other than Joe Rogan and John McAfee. So John Legere used to always come to my broadcast, and anyway, one of my clients was on T-Mobile. I've never confronted John Legere with it. I've even when he was CEO of T-Mobile, I never confronted him with it. I mean, I talked to him, and I talked to him offline, and what happened was one of my users on BraxMe actually experienced somebody from T-Mobile reading BraxMe messages, and the reason they did that is apparently when you read the EULA, they actually install Log Me In, which is a remote access Trojan inside a T-Mobile Android phone, so the tech support can look at your zucking screen. It's like, what the zuck is that? So you got to worry about stuff like that. Now, obviously, the phones I use do not have any such software. Everything is only coming from F-Droid, so you're not going to find any Log Me In BS. Okay? You don't want that. I think having you and Joe, I don't need to be, I don't need that kind of publicity. This publicity is enough. He talks about me once or twice is good enough. I don't need fame. I don't want to be walking on the street and somebody recognizes me. It's uncomfortable. So I don't need to do that. Similar to those break-into car kits where you can buy on Amazon. You could use them to steal cars, and they're mainly used for unlocking cars when you lock your keys into. Yep. I clicked on a link on my phone, and the guy was able to take photos of me. How could I stop this? It's the app. So you have to start deleting apps that you don't trust. Get a de-Googled phone so you control every app that's on there. Thank you, Slammin. What's a good paid email service for use for privacy? Anything. All emails are by nature not secure. The best email service is one you control yourself, where you are not subject to somebody's paid service, where it's your own server. That is the safest. Beyond that, they're all the same. I don't really care if it's Gmail or not Gmail or Proton Mail, whatever. It doesn't make any difference to me. Proton Mail is not going to be better. Even with the encryption, Proton Mail is not going to be better than my own zucking server that only I can see. The reason is if it leaves the server, it's not encrypted anyway. So the only way to get non-encryption, to get it safe, is to have it intra-server, in which case I don't need Proton Mail for that. My own same server will do the same thing. Okay, you can run your own, what's the name of the, who asked that question? Who asked the question about the email? Let me just try to, my goodness, our chat volume is going so fast here, even faster than Periscope. I've not looked at a OnePlus 5. Thank you, Dizzy. Are you familiar with the NA program commercial solutions for classified using cost products combined to be equivalent to X classified solutions? No, no, that's way too specific there. Can Brax Router make an employee think I'm at home when I'm actually overseas? Depends, because normally an employer will need you to connect to their server. Yeah, it's possible, but normally an employer will want you to connect to their VPN. So you have to connect from one VPN to another VPN, which you can do with a Brax router. Do you like sushi? Yes, obviously I like sushi. I had sushi tonight. That was my dinner. Sashimi. Dark Trace. AWS servers like 0.02 per hour. That's a generalized statement. It can be any amount per hour from 50 cents an hour to more. $1 an hour to half a cent an hour. You deleted your Facebook account. What's a good? Okay, so back to what I was saying about email. So email servers that are your own are obviously superior. If it's your own, you actually run it, meaning you can log into the server and set up accounts, and only you can control it. Like a postfix server, if you know how to set those up and you control it yourself and you rent your own server, that is the most secure. Obviously, it costs more because you have to rent the server and to do all that. Plus, somebody has to install it, so that can be quite costly. But if you're running a business, for example, and you want to do that, that's a better way to have more security, because you can assign as many email addresses as you want. You can use as much email as you want, and you don't have to worry about any of that. And the problem with it is that you have to be kind of techie to do it. So I know how to do these servers, and that's my servers have been constantly attacked, and I've had to over the years figure out how to avoid a new attack, and somebody has to keep an eye on that because hackers come up with new techniques to break into email servers. Email servers are the most hacked servers on the planet. So for that reason, you do not want to set up your own email server. It's going to cost you so much time and money. If you know how to set it up, and let's say I set it up and just duplicate what I set up, it doesn't take much time, but it's going to cost some money to rent. So, it's not going to be cheap. I'm thinking, I can't imagine that, it's not going to be cheap to set up an email server, but you can set up as many email accounts as you want. So, I'm going to guess, is it worth it to do it for less than $100 a month? That's probably the minimum that I would say. Beyond that, it's probably not worth doing. Okay, so that's the best, because then you control it. You control it. Nobody else can see it. What's your take on OpenWRT and pfSense? I don't have any take on it. I use OpenWRT, DDWRT. And I haven't used pfSense, but it's the same thing. I wrote my own. My Brax router is my own software. I don't need pfSense, DDWRT, OpenWRT. I don't need any of that because I wrote my own. I did not use their open source. I made my own. Take me to J. Rogan Studio as part of your... In the future, we will all have to write our own programs. It's the only way to be sure. Hopefully not. All the big computer companies grandstand as private when they want you to confuse privacy with security. Correct. Most of the ISPs block port 21 for spam reasons, but how does one use FTP? You shouldn't be using FTP. You should be using SFTP. It is not very smart to use FTP. Not smart at all. No one should be using FTP anymore in this lifetime. Gotten a little late tonight. Is TeamViewer as bad as Log Me In? Yeah, not going to use TeamViewer. Probably hack you too on that. How do you feel about cryptocurrencies that are focused on anonymity, such as Monero or Grin? I have a video on one that I use. It's called Incognito Coin, which can actually accept Monero. And yeah, so use that. Or Monero, or yeah, I'm fine with any of that. I just don't want to keep my coin in Monero. I want to be able to change it to whatever currency I want. And I take crypto. If you want to buy a product with crypto, I take it, and it goes to incognito, and it anonymizes the transaction. Do you think ever be a proper YouTube competitor? Depending on what you mean by YouTube competitor, obviously there are YouTube. There are video serving systems like Library and so on, Vimeo and so on. But YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. That's why it's kind of unbeatable for that. The second largest search engine, which is why I cannot leave YouTube. If new CPU will have backdoors built into the hardware, what do you think this means for brain-machine interfaces in relation to the vulnerability of control over our own consciousness? Wow, that sounds like a Elon Musk kind of statement. I certainly don't trust Azure. What is Brax written in? Brax is written mostly in PHP. The open source is in PHP. So go look at the open source. The app side, there, it just has a web viewer on the app side. It still is mostly calling the cloud, but there's a little bit on the app side to handle notifications and things, and things like swipe and so on. And that's on iOS, that's Objective-C and so on. I'd rather just be software. I never knew the popular Android phone keyboard SwiftKey is owned by Microsoft. Don't fucking use any. Why would you even? Goodness. One of the biggest ways to hack you with remote access Trojans, keyloggers, is through your keyboard. Why would you change the keyboard from the open source? Not something I would risk. Keep to the open source keyboard. You don't want any keyboard sending your keystrokes to someplace else. Computer hardware. Okay. Is there a way to be safe when I want to be trendy and use Starbucks Wi-Fi like the cool kids? Use a VPN at Starbucks. We are already in it, says Tuesday Byte. If you believe anything Microsoft says, you should rethink it. I hate to say this to Microsoft because, I was a Microsoft VAR for, my main livelihood for a long time was based on Microsoft products and Microsoft enterprise solutions. So I was using Microsoft, exclusively, since, very, very long time. And, Microsoft would fly us over to Redmond and tell us what the latest scoop was and so on. And in this day and age, Microsoft is way behind in the surveillance, way behind. So for that reason, I don't really, I don't think there is much surveillance. They're trying to, but they can't really do much surveillance. They're kind of backward. They try to do a lot of surveillance on Windows 10. And so far I've been able to, to disable most of them. And they do give you the options to disable them. So I don't really have much to fear on the Microsoft side that I fear on the Apple and Google side when it comes to phones. So again, it's the phones you have to fear. The phones. Okay, I don't really worry too much about computers other than what I talked about before. Okay, so don't spend too much energy on computers. It's like some of you are like asked me this question today: should you spend so much time thinking about Amazon, PayPal, and all of these financial things? And I'm like saying, what's the point? Anyone that has access to credit already has every credit card transaction. So what is the point? It's kind of late in the game. So we're already part of that, credit card rating and, credit ratings and all that. We're already in that game. So switch to crypto so you can minimize it, or at least have the option of not having to use it when you don't want to. If you want to pay for crypto, for a VPN with crypto, do it. Then you become more anonymous. But to be focused on saying, well, I want to hide my transaction history. How the fuck do you do that with a credit card? By the mere notion of having a credit card, you've given it up. So I use a credit card, so it's convenient. So unfortunately, I can't do anything about that and the tracking on that. But fortunately, there are laws about how long they can keep data. For credit, it's limited: 3 years, 7 years, 10 years. That there are laws about credit data. There are no laws to social media data. Okay, so I don't, it's useless to try to stop it because you can't. So I don't want to mix social and financial and credit cards because I don't want them to share that data. So use a different identity for credit cards versus your identity in social media, so that transactions do not show up as being the same with any of the big players who has access to everything. The only solution long term is crypto. Okay. 7, pretty decent, even though I had many complaints when it came out. You should use as many open source software as possible. Yeah, sure. I hate .NET. Gary Nicholas, hate .NET. I'll do my best to, I wrote a lot of my code in C. I didn't use C#. I wasn't going to use .NET. It's like, what the heck? Why would I load all this garbage on here? Hundreds of megabytes of files that I don't need just for .NET. I don't even know what goes on in there. I don't use .NET. So I'd rather write, very specific code that does a very specific thing. How would I remove a Trojan keylogger from my phone? Factory reset. Start from the beginning. Factory reset. Okay, what did I miss here? Sorry if I missed. Ask your question again. If I miss, it's really hard. We got 18 more minutes here. Off the grid is best to hide your data. By the way, talking off the grid, off topic here. Off the grid. Here in California, you get the option of thinking about using solar. And so, typically you get some sales guy come in and try to sell you solar. And I've had several of those. And then I actually started thinking about it. And do I really want solar that's part of the grid? And then I realized I don't want that. I made a decision. I don't want that. I don't want solar that's part of the grid. So they say, well, you sell your energy back to the electric company, and then they give you credit, and so you save money with this. And I'm like saying to myself, who fucking cares? Why do I need that? When the grid goes down, I lose power. My grid always goes down several times a year. I lose power. I want to be independent of the grid. So I want to be off grid. I want off grid solar with batteries. So I don't need a very big one. I don't need as big one for the grid. So one of these days, when I make enough money, then I want to set up a off grid solar, so that part of my energy is supplied by just a master switch that I can just switch off, and maybe some circuits will always be running off batteries instead of the power company. So what do you think about the app signal? Now, app signal, my main problem with the app signal is the phone number as the identifier. I hear they're changing that. That would be fantastic. Okay, the app signal is that's just the biggest problem. I would never use it with people I don't know because I don't want to give anyone's my phone number. So it's kind of, WhatsApp, all this that uses phone numbers, so stupid. Telegram, I don't like it. So somebody will say, well, you can go, play some tricks on the phone number, like Huge Divide will say. And I don't need to waste my time with that. That is too difficult to do. Why even use a phone number? Well, Signal is going to change. Signal is going to use some other identifier that's not a phone number. So I'm hoping that happens soon. I use Signal for people I know. So if I know them, like in my family, we all use Signal. Okay, so and then you can do video, like your equivalent to FaceTime, voice over IP using Signal. So that's fine. That's fine. So I pre-install Signal on my phones. How much for you to install OS and do Google if I send to you? I have a new Moto G7. It's $100 Lavendi plus $8 of well, depending on the phone. It's $108 to do it. It's includes shipping. Ship it to me and I'll do it. Who all can see our SMS and text messages? The government can, certainly, and the carrier can. A hacker can using SS7, which is why you shouldn't be using texting either. If you use Braxme, Signal, any of those, then nobody else sees it. I don't know what a cipher phone is. Whatever phone company you go through would hand over record at the drop of a phone. Yes. What boy, Callus Coleman here asked so many questions I can't even keep track. Off-grid in California was illegal in the 70s. I'm sure they're going to stop it now. They'll probably say, you don't have a permit. By the way, guys, if you like, what we're talking about here, hit that like button. Hundreds of you have been here watching. Hundreds of you have been watching, and only 99 of you have hit like. So maybe you hit that like button so the algorithm starts to like us some more. SMS or WhatsApp? Come on, don't even mention WhatsApp in this broadcast. Nothing owned by Zuck. Okay, don't talk about any app that's owned by Zucking Zuck. So SMS, standard SMS will be intercepted. So the only way to do that is use encrypted messaging, such as Braxme, my own app, Signal, all that is encrypted messaging. Well, you're zucked, what, W Lady K68. If Google locked the bootloader, then, sell it and get another one. Talk about my VPN. My VPN router gets speeds of up to 100 megabits per second. But is it always like that? No, because the internet is unstable. So, sometimes I'm lucky to get 5 megabits per second, not because of the VPN. This VPN is running fine. Okay, my VPN is in an ISP that has large gigabit, 100 gigabit trunk. So it's not my VPN server. My VPN server is running like, 10% capacity. The problem is the internet itself is very bad nowadays. So it's very hard to make statements about, your VPN is slow. Well, it depends. It depends on what, the day, the hour, your location. So, switch locations and you get better results. Sometimes it's bad on one, switch over. And then try it back again later on. It's kind of unpredictable right now. What are good Android apps that do PGP key? I only use Open Keychain with K9 email. That's what I use on a phone. It's preloaded when I install my Google phone. It comes with K9 and open keychain, so you can add your PGP key in there. I can't talk about an IMSI catcher. I have a whole video on that. It's called Stingray. What else can I add to that video? That video is very detailed. That's who's spying on your phone, part 2. Well, watch part 1 and then watch part 2. You really need to watch all that. Did I hear you say you rotate phones every now and then? I'm always rotating phones because I'm buying and selling phones day in, day out. So I'm always moving my SIM card around. So yeah, they must have like 100 IMEIs for me. What is your purpose? People are always like talking about WireGuard versus OpenVPN. What is your intent? What is your real objective? You can't hack OpenVPN, so what's the point? So yes, some people say that WireGuard is faster, which doesn't really relate to somebody whose VPN is at only 10% of capacity. So not significant enough for me to worry about. Maybe when everybody is using it, then it may be worth doing. I have a 2FA video. Go watch that. I use Authy, and then I have a phone. I have a 2FA without a phone number, and I also have YubiKey. You watch my video on YubiKey. Okay, I have so many videos on that. Well, yeah, you can use whatever you want, but I don't. Why would I trust that? Threema. I mean, I don't need to do it because I have Braxme, and it's open source. What will happen when quantum computing makes our encryption obsolete? Braxme is using 100% symmetric encryption because, in fact, of that fear. I use symmetric encryption for Brax. Even the end-to-end on Brax is symmetric because I don't want to be subjected to the threat of quantum computers. I like Mexican food? Why do you need to ask that? I'm in LA. Everyone eats Mexican food in LA. You trust you trust OpenVPN and it's secure? Of course, it's secure. It's open source. Which smartphone would you recommend for a maximum of privacy, and which OS? The only maximum, well, a Linux phone is maximum, but it's not as usable as a de-Googled phone like the ones I sell. Those are the only two choices, which I keep repeating. Linux phones, de-Googled phones. Linux phones are very hard right now until Pine phones are stable. We are not there yet with the Linux phone, so let's wait. I'll check every month and then I'll tell you. Okay, now it's ready. Okay, so at the moment we're not there yet. So we'll check next month and see if some of the issues that bother me are solved. Mostly it's power management. So if power management is solved on a Pine phone, then Linux phones are most secure. And the only option really where it's easy to find, it's a Pine phone. Nexus 5s are impossible to find now. So, I managed to find like 2 more Nexus 5s, and that may be it. And I may never be able to get a Nexus 5 ever again because I'm not going to pay $100 for Nexus 5. I mean, it's an old phone. So beyond that, the only practical solution for all really is a de-Googled phone. De-Googled phone. No, not a BlackBerry. I had a BlackBerry, and you can't use the browser because nobody's updated the certificates. So a lot of websites will no longer work. So it kind of makes it impractical to use a BlackBerry. So BlackBerries were awesome phones, and they're only 3G though. Should VPN services be used by a router or by individual devices? I prefer doing the VPN on the router. That's why I sell a VPN router, because it's really hard for a typical household with a lot of devices to set it up, including IoT devices and so on. I don't even bother with that. My network is already partitioned into VPN and non-VPN. So by default, we always go to the VPN one, and we only go to the non-VPN one when there's a reason. Otherwise, we don't do that. I don't have any thoughts on Sony phone. There's not a, you mean like Sony Xperia? You can load Sailfish on Sony Xperia, but Sailfish you have to pay for, and it's a Linux OS, and it's not completely open source, and it's paid for, and you have to be in the EU. So for that reason, it's kind of hard for me to spend too much time talking about it, because it's not widely available. And it's you have to pay for the OS and an expensive Sony Xperia. So if you're gonna pay that much money, by the time you get done with a Sony Xperia for $300, then you pay Jola for their Sailfish OS. Then you're up to $400, and for a slow phone. Not sure that's cost effective. I mean, it's a good phone, and it's usable. And you can run some Android apps using their emulator. So, but compared to the Google phone, the Google phones are stable and have no identity, and at least I know what's going on with it. Okay, we're down to 4 minutes here. What do you think about the ethics of buying any Chinese products, as the corporations are essentially CCP controlled? Well, it's kind of a problem stating that, when the reality is companies like Apple, Google, and everyone else, Samsung, LG, I mean, everyone has bought into using, China as their builder. You can't even buy small electronic parts that are not from China. So to complain about it right now is kind of pointless, because the choices were made before, and they have to undo those choices. And right now we don't have a choice. Whatever I buy, I mean, where am I going to buy them? Every electronic part you get from Amazon is from China. They've kind of taken over the electronics industry. Does PIA work with the Google phones? Yes. Which smartphone is cheap? Do you recommend it, easy to install? Again, I'm not going to go advise you on this, because the only phones I do are the ones I do. The Moto G7 Play, Google Pixel, and you have to find one that you can Google unlock. And 50% of them you cannot Google unlock. They have to be from the Google store. So that's a pain. OnePlus One, hard to find. Nexus 5, extremely hard to find now. I've been selling Nexus 5 for 7-8 months, and or more. And I must have bought them all, because no one has them anymore. So I don't have. I have a Nexus 5 with a defect. It has a little thing on the screen, and I'll give it up for cheap. So if anyone wants it for cheap, I'll pre-install with anything for that. And it's actually very nice, in very good condition. So if you want a second, especially if you already have an Nexus 5 and you just want one, the defect is that the screen has a blemish on it. There's a small blemish in the corner that obviously are burnt pixels. So there's some burnt pixels in a small section, and I can sell that cheap. Install anything you want, or you can buy raw as is, and then I'll even give it to you even cheaper. Okay, so contact me, and if you don't want me to do anything to it, I'll sell it to you very cheap, like cheap, like $30. Okay, if you want me to install something, uh, I'll install whatever for 100 instead of the usual 172. So that's a $70 discount just for that little screen problem. Name the guest account. What? If I pay my SIM card with my credit card, is my phone forever identified as owned by me? Will buying an anonymous SIM card anonymize? You cannot anonymize your SIM card purchase, so forget it. Just remove the SIM card when you want to be safe, and use it less for texting and so on. T Torchon, thank you. PinePhone versus Librem versus Google versus future phones. I'll take the Nexus. You mean the Nexus with a defect? So sure, I'll sell you the Nexus with a defect. Contact me on Brax, and I'll show you the picture of it. What the defect is. Again, it's a small blemish on the screen. It's still quite usable, and it's actually the rest of the phone is in very good shape. It's actually a very clean phone, except for that screen smudge. I found your GitHub. Yes, I have a GitHub. Whoever, if you're asking, do I know how to program? Well, go look at the GitHub. Whoever created Nexus 5 phones should make more for the market. You mean Google? It's LG. LG made it for Google. LG made the phone for Google. Only issue, I'm using it. The only issue with it for now is the mentioned method capitalizing a word, unlike SIFKey where cursor. What are you using, McLeaks? I'm working to limit my reliance on Google services. I get myself 6 months. You can't. You have to go. Taurus. You have to start fresh. You cannot undo. I have one. I mean, if you want, I have a OnePlus One Lineage phone with Lineage OS with gaps, and I don't want it because I can't remove gaps from it. So if you want it, that's another phone I can sell. Anyone want it with gaps? But I don't. I want to push gaps on anyone. Why would you want a phone with gaps on it? So now I want that Lexus. Why would you want that Lexus, Andrew? You got all the fancy ones. Don't get some cheap Nexus. Go get a fancy phone. How strong is the signal on the Brax router? Is it possible to attach Wi-Fi boosters to the? Of course, yes. The VPN route, the Brax router. What you do? I'm running out of time here. I'm out of time, but I'll just summarize this. The VPN router the Brax router can run as a wired router, and then you can attach, which is what I do. It's a wired gigabit router, and then I attach other Wi-Fi's to it. And that way, then you can use whatever you want, and then have a VPN trunk, which is gigabit. So it's going to be a gigabit trunk, and then you can put. I have five Wi-Fi routers running in my house. 2 of them are non-VPN, and then 3 of them are VPN, and they're connected to the VPN, the Brax router running wired. So the Brax router is not running any Wi-Fi. When used in wired mode, it turns off the Wi-Fi. Okay, and you buy it from me on my store. Going back to BBS days, yes. We should do that. Okay, so thank you guys. We are out of time. So thank you for watching, and please hit that like button before you leave the broadcast if you liked or not. If not, then hit the dislike. Thank you so much for growing my channel. My channel's finally getting some attention, and thank you, Joe Rogan, for that very long discussion about me and my products. Even in fact, he's talk specifically about my products, which is like best advertising ever. It's amazing. So that is very, very kind. He must have really liked the topic. So he must have been researching the topic to begin with. So yes, I saw. You see on your YouTube channel, there's a little thing there to list if any big time people subscribe to your account, and that's when he popped up as the largest number of subscribers subscribing to my channel. And I saw that, and it's like, whoa, is that the real Joe Rogan, or some other person calling himself Joe Rogan? And then it says verified. It's not his JRE account. He is using his own personal account. The one that he has is martial arts ones. That's the channel that he uses personally, and that's what was subscribed to my channel. So anyway, have a great weekend, my friends. Thank you for watching, and join us on Braxme. Again, Braxme is open source. Braxme was overwhelmed after the was mentioned by Joe Rogan, and it was so slow. There was, there were like hundreds of signups in that moment, and it was like slowing down like crazy. So I finally had to up the server, the more costly server, to keep it running. I was running on a cheap server, and I can't do that anymore because there's too many people on Brax. And so come on, welcome in. It's free. Go do whatever you want. Talk in private on Brax. Bring your family. New to the channel, thank you, Screenshot Mania, but you're typing crazy things in there. Okay, thank you very much, and I will see you in a video during the middle of the week, and hopefully tomorrow I'll take some rest. Don't try to chat with me too much tomorrow. I'm going to go on the boat. I'm going to go on the boat and go do some fix my boat. It's been a hard week. Thank you. Good night.